Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judy, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the 14-Yard NFL Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast. I'm your host Sam Morse, and we're down to our final four with 3 games left in the 2023 NFL season. 2 games this weekend, of course, it's Conference Championship weekend on Sunday. And joining me to break down both of those games is the one and only NFL UK content creator that I'm sure you're all aware of. It's George from George and Sports. How you doing, mate?
I'm great. Can I just say, by the way, that's a dope intro that you got there with all the shout-outs. That's pretty cool. I've got to say, that's pretty dope. But no, thank you for having me on the show. I'm excited to talk some ball. Like you said, man, last couple games, our last few games now, it's a great point and a sad point in the season because obviously, you know, we're towards finding out who's about to win it all. But at the same time, that also means we have the long off season before, you know, things start to happen again. But you do have things in between, like the draft and all the off season moves and the free agents and things like that. But it's a bittersweet moment.
Oh, absolutely, and this is crunch time really, and it is the best because it's the games that everyone's going to be watching. The Chiefs Ravens game broke a record. The Chiefs Bills game last week broke the record for the most watched game. And I think we probably will break those records again with the games we've got this week. But before we get into those, there's been a lot of head coaching news since we last spoke on Tuesday, and we'll start in Vegas where Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco were introduced as Raiders head coach and GM on Wednesday. I don't know about you, George, but I love they decided to stick with Pierce. Yeah,
for sure. I think you can see he's changed something with that team. You look at the guy that had it before, who I was never a fan of, in Josh, and I never thought he would last there. He's not the kind of coach who, you know, players want to warm to or play for, and that's very important. I mean, it's one thing, you know, having to come on these guys, but if these guys don't want to play for you, you will quickly find out. And it was the case with Josh McDaniels, and he's obviously out the door. And Pierce just, you know, he's come in, the players warm to him. They have the emotional relationship, which I think people overlook quite a lot. And it shouldn't be overlooked because it's a physical game, but it's also a mental and emotional game too. And they had a good run of games. You know, they were doing well. The star players on the team were happy. Any point you talk about guys like Max Crosby and Devontae Adams, 2 of the best people in their positions in the game, who potentially are willing to leave the team if X and Y isn't done, then you know you've got a problem. So I'm glad they've done the right thing. They love the guy. He's a great coach. He's got the experience as well. And you can just see it. There's a difference in the locker room. There's a difference in the team. I mean, McDaniels is gone, and these guys, and I'm not saying they're smoking cigars because he left, but they were happy. You know, you could see the energy was back. And like I said, they won a few games down the line. A little bit too late for them. But it's good. It's great for them. Great stadium. Obviously, it's where the Super Bowl's been hosted in a couple of weeks' time too. So onwards and upwards for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to be there as well on Radio Row. How did that feel getting that free yesterday?
It still doesn't feel real. I'll be totally honest. Like the whole thing is just so very surreal. Like right now, I'm still in my mind. I'm trying to piece things together, like what I'm doing, where I'm going to be. I'm doing a lot of work whilst I'm out there as well, which is great. But being on now Media Row, previously called Radio Row, is just, for me, it's a dream come true, man. I mean, that's kind of my element. I can't wait to be in and amongst the chaos, the organized chaos. It's just a dream come true. So yeah, I'm still pinching myself to think that it's going to be me. In fact, I'm actually in the process of getting some merch made up just so I can, you know, I want to stand out in some kind of way. So no, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be good, and I can't wait, man.
Love it. Yeah. As for the Raiders, again, I agree with you. I think they're a completely different team with Pierce as an interim, and I think Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders, has also realised that you know, I think he made a mistake by not hiring Rich Bisaccia after John Gruden was pushed out of the team. So I think that's a great move. As for Tom Telesco, the GM, he's an interesting one because he was at the Chargers for 10 years as GM. He built a really good roster up, but they've never really were able to achieve anything. But you know, it's certainly a good drafter. You can see it because the Chargers have smashed drafts recently. But you know, whether that was more of a an upper problem or not with the Chargers, we'll see, or whether it's just there's something wrong there. So I think they just needed to clean house, and that's what they did. And he found himself into a job very, very easily. So we'll see how that goes. But I think it's a good move for the Raiders as well, because with their draft history, they've not had great drafts at all recently. So I think with them that does make a lot of sense. Right, we'll go on to the next bit of news that Dolphins defensive coordinator Vic Fangio and the Miami have mutually agreed to part ways after the great season on defense, Fangio's defense, especially second half of the year. But he's heading to Philly to become defensive coordinator because he's from Pennsylvania. He's going back home basically, and there was a little bit of a power struggle between him and Mike McDaniel, and a lot. I think, judging by social media, there's a lot of Dolphins defensive players that are very happy that he's gone. They're expected to pursue Brandon Staley, the old Chargers head coach, who basically runs the same defense as Fangio does. In fact, probably a little bit better than Fangio. If you judging both time in the Rams a couple of years ago, it's better to pursue him or Philadelphia, the old defensive coordinator Sean Desai, who is again is from that tree. So I think nothing should change defensively for Miami, but I think that move there is just both parties separating and Brandon Staley, who Madonna knows very well, probably coming in just a bit more of a happier marriage there. Sticking with the Chargers and Staley, the Chargers hired Michigan National Championship winning head coach and former Niners head coach Jim Harbaugh on Wednesday too. Again, I absolutely love this move. I thought it should have happened last year because there was a lot. He did a lot of interviews and stuff last year. Obviously, didn't fire Staley last year, but he probably should have been fired last year. And the stars have aligned and they've happened this year. He managed to get good quarterback play out of Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco. And he's done that with basically anyone he's had at Michigan as well, and I hope he can do that with Justin Herbert. He's already been great, but he's never, he's not won a playoff game. He's not really been one to rise in the big moments, and maybe Harbaugh can be the one that can get that out of him. They've needed a good coach. They've not really had that. They've always had like a young coach or someone. And Dean Spanos, the Chargers owner, has historically been a bit cheap. So they've ended that. Harbaugh's gone everywhere he's gone, and I mean this has potential to be a massive upgrade over Brandon Staley, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, the Chargers are a very strange team. I think they've got like top 3 or top 4 most expensive payroll in the NFL. You look at their roster, and I know guys, especially in the wide receiver room, don't always stay healthy. But what team always has healthy guys all season long? It doesn't exist. Then you have guys like Austin Eckler, who the team don't want to pay and want to freeze out and want to get rid of, which to me is absolutely insane. He's one of the best backs in the league. You just aren't using him effectively because your squad isn't effective. They I think it was J.C. Jackson. I forget who it was. The cornerback who they signed from the Patriots. Only to send him back after paying him a hell of money. Like the whole organization is just strange. And you talk about Brandon Staley, who I guess is a defensive-minded head coach who comes in, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You can go all the way back to their explosions where they lost against the Jags in the playoffs in a horrible game. And when you have someone like Justin Herbert, who I don't want to say he's been wasted away because he's still so young, but effectively he's being wasted. He should be in better positions right now. I mean, you look at guys like CJ Stroud, who in their first season in the NFL gets all the way to winning the NFC South and getting into the divisionals. I mean, Justin Herbert should be in a better position right now. The Chargers should be in a better position right now, and they just aren't. I think a lot of it does come down to head coaching. People overlook it a lot, and I understand it's the player on the field at the end of the day, but it does come down from top down. The harmony, the synergy, the chemistry. Are you on the same kind of vibe? And they just definitely weren't for me. So having a guy like Harbaugh in the building, obviously for different reasons between the brothers, they'll be scheduled to play against each other next season, later this season as well. But bringing a guy like that in who knows how to win, who commands respect, I think is going to do a lot for that team, a lot of good things for that team. Personally, I hope they keep the likes of Austin Eckler. Obviously, you've got some aging receivers there. You've got Keenan Allen, who seems to do it year in, year out, regardless of what's going on with the team. You bring him back. Mike Williams, hopefully he can stay healthy because he's a big threat, which they've missed all season due to injury too. So, I mean, they've got some good pieces there. I mean, you've got Bosa on the line and Khalil, but I think you still need to fill some holes. But overall, they've done a great job for sure. And I think you'll actually have like a team. The guys will actually want to play for him now. They'll actually want to to get those wins and show face sort of thing. So it's because the Chargers are one of them teams where they don't have home fans, they can never fill a stadium, etc., etc. This is what the change that they need, I think.
Oh, absolutely. It's been needed for a while. That was all for for Wednesday. Then yesterday, on Thursday, we had two more head coaches hired. The first was Bucks offensive coordinator Dave Canales. He was hired by the Panthers, and he is the offensive coordinator responsible for Baker Mayfield's strong season. He was also the QB coach in Seattle last year for Geno Smith's emergence the year before as well. And it sounds like he's the right guy to help Bryce Young next year. And I think, well, for a few years as well, because they're giving him a 6-year contract. But I think the Panthers they know they're gonna be bad for a while with the way they haven't got a first round pick this year. They're not in the best situation. So if you can get an offensive play caller and your quarterback nailed in that time, then when the rest of the roster's built, you're probably in a good spot, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, you look at you named where he's been before, the guys that he's worked with, and then you look at the quarterback that the Panthers have now, Bryce Young, and he needs some help. He needs someone who could put an arm around him. And okay, credit, he's been put into a horrible situation. And let's be honest, Frank Reich never wanted him anyway. He wanted CJ Stroud. So there you have the issues with owners and head coach, and obviously that never goes well when Frank is out the door. So yeah, it's a rebuild as much as people want to say it isn't. It's a complete rebuild across the board. You've got your quarterback, you know your situation there. Now can you build the pieces around it? So it's another good move. I'm sure Bryce Young is happy. I'm sure the team is happy. And it can't get any worse than this. It cannot get any worse. It's only got to be, only the way is up from here. So we'll see what they do moving forward. But at least they've got the right pieces, the core pieces in play, and now they need to build around that and see what they can do with the franchise.
Absolutely. And then just before I was going to bed last night, it was confirmed that Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris was hired by the Falcons. I spoke last week about Bill Belichick not being a fit for Atlanta despite going for a second interview, and it seemed like their owner Arthur Blank agreed with me. I think Morris is a great hire. I think he's had a great year coaching the Rams defense that had no name on it other than Aaron Donald last year, and they were an average unit in the NFL, which compared to the talent they had, it was really, really impressive. He knows the team too. When Dan Quinn was fired, he was also the interim head coach there, and he's been in he knows many of the players before, and he's widely regarded around the league as a great people person, which is a great quality you need to have for a head coach. He's been a head coach previously at Tampa Bay over 10 years ago. He was one of the youngest coaches in the NFL. Then he was there for 3 years, didn't quite work out, but he found himself on his feet. He went to Washington, where he basically rebuilt his career as part of that staff in 2013 under Mike Shanahan in Washington, which has just produced so many head coaches. He's now the 5th head coach. Obviously Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, the other 4. He's now the 5th, and there could be Bobby Slowick of the Texans could be the 6th person. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, he's the 5th person on that staff to become a head coach. And I think he'll bring an offensive coordinator from that mold with him as well, a good play caller, which I don't know about you, but I think that's probably much better than having Bill Belichick, yes, he's a great defensive guy, but he's just neglected the offensive side of the football, and then having Josh McDaniels. For the players the Falcons have, I think this move suits more. Yeah,
this is probably one of my most exciting moves today, and I can't wait to see what they do with this team. If I wasn't a Colts fan, I would have been a Falcons fan because I was obsessed with the Julio Jones, Devontae Freeman, Tony Gonzalez era. I was obsessed with it. And I got to say, Raheem Morris is a great guy. You said it there. And it's something that I'm big on. And it's the relationship side. It's the emotional intelligence. It's how you connect with your team and how you get them to believe into what your mantra is. The same way that Dan Campbell has got his team believing, which is why they're in the situation they're in now. Atlanta is one of those I call dog teams where they have the ability to grind and win out games. Now they've got some pieces on both sides of the ball. The quarterback room is still a bit messy, and I don't know where they go there. I was never a fan of Desmond Ridder. I'm still not a fan of Desmond Ridder. Never understood why they got rid of Mariota only to put in Ridder and then to put in Heineke. It's just a bit of a revolving door. But they've got a head coach who's going to do right by the team. And again, the players will want to play for him. You have so much offensive talent. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, who revealed that he was injured for a long time and people never really knew. Now we're seeing things come to fruition. Some key pieces on that defense, Calais Campbell, Jesse Bates, who made the switch from the Bengals. I think they're set up really, really well. And, it's about time they started to make a push for that NFC South because at the minute the Bucs seem to be taking that crown. But I love this move. I can't wait to see what they do in the offseason and how they come out firing in September because I think they'll be one to watch 100%.
Absolutely, I think Justin Fields is the perfect quarterback for that situation as well.
He
If
is.
if the Bears do go for Caleb Williams, he is, because you've got an offensive line there, you've got some weapons as well, and you've got a defense. So that, if Justin Fields is going to be a success in this league, that is the place you want him to land. So I think that is a great spot for him, and hopefully they do make that trade. Anyway, it's time to talk about Conference Championship weekend, and we'll start with the first game. The Chiefs heading to Baltimore after winning the first ever away playoff game with Patrick Mahomes last week. They're now in their 6th AFC Championship game in a row. The Ravens will host this one, and obviously the Ravens have MVP favourite Lamar Jackson. He's set to play in his first championship game. The Ravens were the 1 seed in the AFC. They went 13-4 in the regular season, and as the 1 seed had the first round bye before their big win over Houston, especially in the fourth quarter, they sort of ran away with it last week. The Chiefs were the 3 seed. They went 11-6 in the regular season and are back in the championship game. Despite having a down year offensively, they've turned it on in the playoffs with 2 of their best offensive performances of the season pairing back to back, and that's paid with a defense as well that has been great all season. It's been the best defense the Chiefs have had, and they normally turn it on in the playoffs. So the fact that the defense this good all season is great, and it's given them a chance to compete for their second straight AFC title. And it's remarkable they're here again, isn't it? Because they're going for the 4th visit to the Super Bowl in 5 years. That's just mental, isn't it?
The Chiefs, man, like 2 seasons ago when the AFC West blew up and Tyreek Hill moved and Devontae Adams moved and all these crazy deals were happening. Russell Wilson comes into the Broncos, and then you've obviously got the Chargers and Brandon Staley. Including myself, the narrative was a lot of, all right, the Chiefs are going to struggle, and then they go win the Super Bowl, right? In debatable fashion against the Eagles, but whatever. Then you see this year their worst ever receiving corps since Patrick Mahomes has been with the squad, and ever since he's been with the squad, all he's ever done is gone to AFC Championship games, and that's it. Like to a ridiculous stat. I mean, whether people like it or not, this is the Chiefs chasing that dynasty that the Patriots currently hold. I mean, they're not there yet, and I don't know if they'll get there, but man, they just find a way to do it every single year. Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, even Patrick Mahomes, they've all, had a down season. This isn't their great season by any means. It's the first time Patrick Mahomes has actually had to go on the road for this championship. He went on the road for the divisionals and obviously beat the Buffalo Bills. I'm siding with the Ravens in this game because I don't have any hate towards the Chiefs. I think they're clearly they're a great team. They find ways to win, and that's what it's about. And I always say it's not how you start; it's about how you finish, right? And the Chiefs, didn't have a great season, but they're still here. The Ravens have just been so damn consistent. I've loved everything that they've done in terms of their play calling, Todd Monken, everything they're doing on both sides of the ball. And you got to think as well, they've been decimated by injuries that they are pretty much every season. Difference here is Lamar Jackson hasn't been part of that squad in terms of the injury squad because he's been injured previously. This is his first time in the AFC Championship game. Great news that Mark Andrews is back, his safety blanket. But for me, you've got Isaiah Likely, who's been great as well. So it might be a case of using more 12 personnel, getting both tight ends blocking, because you've also got Dalvin Cook, who people forget that they've just signed. He's still good. He's still got some juice left. You put him in the right position, I think he can thrive. But Lamar Jackson and this offense, Zay Flowers, and their other pieces in the wide receiver room, their defense as well, this is pretty much like the defense of the 2000s. This defense is unreal. Patrick McQueen is lights out. They are doing things the right way. They are making teams, play to the Ravens way. The way they shut down the Texans, which I don't think people were expecting. And credit to the Texans, they're a great side. Great head coach, great quarterback, some great pieces, and they were missing some pieces too. But the way the Ravens have dominated teams and beat so many of the playoff teams already is just been so impressive. And it's a credit to them. They've had it tough over a number of seasons. Not to talk about Lamar and the whole contract situation too, to the point where teams are openly declaring themselves out of not wanting to sign the guy. Like, I mean, what are we talking about here? What are we looking at?
Being the Falcons, by the way.
Exactly right. One of them being the Falcons. But we're looking at, potential MVP, someone who's done it time and time again, but this time he's managed to get all the way to the AFC Championship game at home against none other than the Chiefs. So I'm expecting a good game. The Chiefs aren't about to just sit down and get beat, but man, from what I've seen, this Ravens defense have enough to stop this Chiefs offense. I mean, you've got guys like Kyle Hamilton who can cover. He's a great blitzer, great in the safety position, long, great strides. Him against Kelsey is a lock, and that for me, Hamilton wins that all game, all day, every day. Then you got to start relying on your other guys who seemingly can't catch the ball. So we'll see what happens here. They've got a strong run game in Isaiah Pacheco. We know that. But this Ravens defense is not one to mess with, and I'm going with a Ravens win. I think it will. I want to say about a touchdown to the Ravens, a touchdown or more. And for me, maybe we see Andy Reid retire at the end of this season too.
Yeah, potentially. Either way, this game, before I pick my win, I think this game is going to make history because Mahomes last year, he became the first black quarterback to win 2 MVPs. It's a record that Lamar Jackson looks set to equal this year after a tremendous season. He's been absolutely excellent. His Ravens had the best record in the NFL, beating 6 playoff teams, 10 teams with a winning record as well, which is just a tremendous stat. And Lamar, he played brilliantly in big wins down the stretch against Miami and San Francisco. He also lost his number one weapon, Mark Andrews, as you said, earlier in the year. He's in a new system with Todd Monken. He's had to build chemistry with a whole new set of weapons. The only person who's remained in that system is Rashad Bateman. Back and come over. Nelson Aguilar come over. Isaiah Likely, who's been great at tight end as well. As a rookie, he's been great. He's now in his first championship game. With his team, the favourites to reach the Super Bowl. And Andrews, as you said, could be back this week. I think it's safe to say that Lamar's silenced a lot of doubters, hasn't he? Especially by winning in the playoffs last week, because that was the one thing. It's like, have he won in the playoffs? He's only won one playoff game before last week. Last week he was excellent again. He's been good all year. It's so great to see, isn't it?
It's refreshing, man. It's I mean, I just keep thinking back to draft night where he stood all the way down to number 32 and the Ravens took a shot on him, and he got up there with Deion Sanders. And the first thing you said is, it's a wrap. The league's in trouble now, and I'm about to win a Super Bowl. So I'm really hoping that he can do it. I'm backing him to beat the Chiefs. I know we're going to talk about the next game, so I won't say who I think's going to make it, but I'm backing them to win it all, man. I really am. I want it for them. I want it for the city of Baltimore. They're a great team, a great franchise, well respected, well run as well. Both Mike McDonald and Todd Monken on offense and defense have done great things. And for me, it's very fitting after the season that he's had for him to go on and win this game and then win the Super Bowl and just sit back and relax and enjoy it, man.
Absolutely, and this is also the first AFC Championship game between 2 black quarterbacks, the second of all time after Donovan McNabb and Michael Vick met in the NFC Championship game in 2004. I did an essay on this for university recently, and I think it's a shame we have to talk about this because it shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be that we're talking about being a huge moment, but it just shows how much progress we've made, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at history where, black quarterbacks essentially weren't given the opportunity to make it to these stages because they weren't given the opportunity to play, and it's a matter of fact. So had that not been the case, this wouldn't even be a discussion because we would have seen multiple black oppositions and multiple black, last year was the first time we had 2 black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, I believe, with Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. And that, it shouldn't be a thing, but it is because of history. So it's kind of like how... George Eghator said for the Patriots, you can't not see color. There's a reason why this is a stat only in 2024 because they've not been given the opportunity. So of course it's great to see, and hopefully we want more of this moving forward. Same way we want more coaches in the NFL. Owners is a whole different kind of conversation, a weird one in that sense. But it's great to see the small steps of progression, and it's going to be a great game too. I mean, it could be a case where. Obviously, actually, no, it couldn't be because we got Josh Allen, and we've got. I was going to say it could be a case of having another 2 black quarterbacks in Super Bowl, but obviously that's not the case. But it's great to see it's progress. Obviously, small progress, but at least we're seeing the progress. So it's good. It's good stuff.
Absolutely. This year, the 15 of the 32 quarterbacks that started the year were of a minority, which is great stuff because it was about 15% 20 years ago. So that's almost 50% is a huge, and it just shows as well that if you play and don't go away from sort of racial stereotypes. If you just look at a player's play, it's you can see that anyone can play quarterback. Exactly brilliant. And fair play to Andy Reid and John Harbaugh and Brett Veach and Eric DaCosta for believing in that as well, because these are 2 of the best organisations in the league. You got the 2 coaches have been a big part in their success too. Andy Reid and John Harbaugh are the second and third longest serving head coaches behind Mike Tomlin in the NFL. It feels weird actually because you would have thought they would have met like lows in the playoffs, but this is actually the first time they're meeting in the playoffs, which
Wow.
for two coaches that have combined won 3 Super Bowls in the last 12 years, you wouldn't expect that, would you?
No, I guess it just shows you the magic of the NFL. You things that you expect to happen don't always happen, and things that you don't expect to happen. And some people might say that about the Bucks making it this far or the Lions making it this far. So that's why we love the NFL, though, man. You can never really predict what's going to happen aside from you guess the one seed is currently on their way, let's say, to the Super Bowl. But then you had a team like the Packers, the youngest team in the league, who made it to the divisionals, and nobody thought they'd make it that far anyway. So no, it's a good time. The NFL was great, man. I can't say enough about it, but it's that point in the season where it's crunch time, and you got to put up or shut up, essentially.
Exactly. As you were saying, George, I think this may be the best team that I think John Harbaugh's ever had with the Ravens. The offense is certainly better than it was in 2012, and the defense is one of the best ever units. Statistically, it's amazing. I feel like I'm saying it every week, but they're number one in scoring, number one in sacks, number one in takeaways, number 2 in the red zone. Like that, I think they're the first team
Scary
to lead.
team, man.
Yeah, the first team to lead in those 3 categories. I think since the 60s. I think NBC was saying the other day, which is just some amazing stat, and they're pretty damn difficult to operate against. They've got all pro players at every level on that defense. With Justin Madden BK was second team all pro inside at defensive tackle, and Cole Hamilton at safety, or Thomas plays in the slot, and Roquan Smith at linebacker. They're first team all pro. They've been great all year. The Chiefs' offense is certainly going to need to be as perfect as they were the last few weeks to win this one. But I'm not sure I see that happening, so I'm going to side with you here. I absolutely love this Ravens team. Good at everything. As I mentioned, 6 All-Pro nominations for a reason. Third most of the Cowboys and the Niners. And I feel like they're a bit of a mismatch for this Chiefs defense that I've been hyping up all season. I've loved this Chiefs defense. They pride themselves on being able to take away a number 1 receiver. They're very, very good at that. But Baltimore don't really have that. They just have weapons who are more of a committee kind of vibe. But they have a plethora of weapons, and they can throw in a bit of a run game as well. They're so balanced. If one person's taken away, then they've got loads of other options there. And I think they're the best team in the league, and I think they're going to the Super Bowl. So I agree with you.
Nice. Yeah, I'm down with the Ravens, man, for sure.
Absolutely. Right. Let's move over to the NFC Championship game. Championship weekend ends with the Detroit Lions playing in their first championship game in 32 years. Their opponent is the NFC number 1 seed San Francisco 49ers, who have played in 10 championship games since Detroit lost to Washington in 1992. But Dan Campbell and GM Brad Holmes have turned the Lions around with the winning 12 games for only the second time in history, and them securing the 3rd seed on their way to their first division title since 1993, and their first NFC North title too, because the last time they won a division, it was the NFC Central, and the Bucks won a division there as well. So it just shows how much has happened since the Lions last won the NFC North, the division anyway. But after the Cowboys lost to Green Bay, it meant that Detroit would then get to host 2 home playoff games should they win in the wildcard round, and they did that. Jared Goff took down Matthew Stafford in a revenge game against the Rams before beating the Bucks at the death last week and booking their place in the NFC title game. And fair play to Goff as well. He really stepped up in the last 2 games, having really struggled in the big games previously. We saw in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, he really struggled in that game. The Rams scored 3 points overall in that one. And the Lions now, they're just in such a great spot, and Goff being good in a big game the last two weeks has been great for them, and it's really helped them win these games, hasn't it?
I'm a big fan of the Lions. The last 2 years now, every show that I go on or any podcast, I always talk about the Lions have always been my dark horse sleeper team, and they've continued to be that. And I'm not surprised that they're at where they're at. I really am not, because Dan Campbell's a great guy, and they really buy. And this is why I keep saying the same thing. They buy into his mantra. They buy into his motto of being aggressive and quite literally biting off kneecaps and just showing that hunger. I mean, what they've done for the city of Detroit, they haven't done in 30 years. They've never won a Super Bowl. This is foreign territory for them. And like you said, so many things have happened since the last time they made it to the NFC Championship game. So many things have happened. I mean, I think the World Wide Web was launched back when the last time they made it to the NFC Championship. So
about 5 or 6 new teams that just didn't even exist.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think in 1994 they added 4 teams. So it's crazy, but I'm not surprised. They got a great thing going. Jared Goff deserves more credit, because we talk about Dan Campbell and we talk about their run game, but we don't talk about Jared Goff. I mean, he is the guy who's leading the squad right now. And I guess because of his history with the Rams, maybe, and the Super Bowl where they had a poor showing against the Patriots, and how he's been shipped away from the Rams, and they brought in Lions ex-quarterback Matthew Stafford. And I think people like to shy away from that, but he deserves a lot more credit. He deserves his flowers because at the end of the day, he's the guy who's sitting in the rock to the guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Reynolds and Laporta. And obviously they got a great team. They got a great defense, a gritty defense. I mean, they've got some names in that defense, but they're not a defense where the likes of Aaron Donald or the likes of Bosa. They make it work, and this is the thing. It's about winning in different ways, and they've made it this far. And they come up against a 49ers team, and now they aren't playing at home. They've had an emotional roller coaster, achieving all the success they've had, and making history once again, and having all the stars in Detroit show up: Eminem, Big Sean, pretty much everyone, Barry Sanders, and they still rose to the occasion. So you now face up against a 49ers team in Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, who's a mastermind at what he does. In the game where Debo may or may not play, I expect him to play. It's just a bit of a media game right now that he may or may not be healthy. Of course, you've got to play that game. It's a game. But then you can have guys like McCaffrey who can, own a game on his own. Defense speaks for itself. Bosa. It's very hard to. It's a team where you're going to have to be on your best. You can't afford to make any mistakes. You can't afford to give the ball back to a team like that. There's a lot of talk about Brock Purdy right now, whether he's a game manager or not, whether he's a great quarterback or not. But again, at the end of the day, he's the guy in the quarterback position. And had he not been in that position, would they be here? Who knows? Who knows? So you can only play who's on the other side of the ball. And this team, led by a guy like Fred Warner on the defensive side, and Debo and CMC and Ayuk and Kittle on the other side. But I think the Lions win the game. I'm down with the Lions. I think the Lions win the game. I'm largely basing that off Debo being out. If Debo is in, I think it's a slightly different story because the firepower on the offense is a lot to deal with. But the last time the 49ers were missing Debo and Trent Williams, they lost 3 games on the bounce. Games on the bounce. And if you can put Brock Purdy in, unfavorable positions and help make him scream and scramble in the pocket, then good things don't necessarily happen, especially if you aren't going to have Debo. So I'm very high on the Lions. I think they're riding that wave. I mean, you look at other teams in the past, like the Vikings, who had the Minnesota Miracle with Stephon Diggs and beating the Saints. The very next game, they got smacked because the emotional high was just too much to come down from. But the Lions have seemed to ride that very well. You mentioned it, 2 home playoff wins in forever. And I feel like they're able to channel that really well, not let the moment get to them too much. And there is a lot of that, being able to stay calm, realize the significance of the situation, but not let it get to you. Now you're traveling away to the 49ers. And I expect Detroit, their fans, to travel really, really, really well. I mean, this is a momentous occasion for them. And I just think Dan Campbell, I mean, all the clips I see of him going back to training camp where he's asking them to train hard in pads this early on for a reason, because we don't want to get to week 8 and then you wake up and you realize we're playing a physical game. We need to be ready right now. So I'm really high on the Lions. I think Jared Goff has enough to do what they need to do because they have enough weapons around them. And again, largely based on Debo being out. And if he is out, I really do think the Lions can go all the way. If Debo's in, I'm probably going to say maybe the 49ers win, but in a close game, closer than people expect. Because people weren't expecting to see, that the Packers nearly beat the 49ers. I'm sorry, but the Packers should have won that game. And for me, they had that game won.
Yeah, absolutely.
They had that game won. So it's a shame that that they had to lose. But I think you would have seen a little bit of a blueprint there. But once again, if Debo's out, different scenario. But I mean, I love everything the Lions were doing. And if they don't win this game, I expect them to run it back in a very significant fashion next season.
Oh, absolutely. They don't look like a team that's not played a playoff game in 32 years or whatever. They look like they're pretty perennial playoff visitors. And, as you mentioned there, it just, they no longer have the longest streak without a playoff win. Not only did they end that streak, they've got into the NFC Championship game. And, as you're saying there, that there's a real big chance they could get into the Super Bowl. That'd be so cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, initially, I had gone with a Ravens 49ers Super Bowl, and that had been my take for quite a while. I've completely flipped it on its head, and I actually don't want the 49ers to win, even if Debo is back. I don't want them to win. I want the Lions to win.
It would be
I
like the
love
script with the logo, wouldn't it? Because everyone's talking about that. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm rooting for something against that. It'd be so funny.
Let's break the curse. Let's get rid of that whole whatever colors are on the Super Bowl an issue of who's going to make it. Let's be done with that. The narrative of Lamar Jackson versus Jared Goff, but what the Lions stand for and what they've had to go through to get here and to make it here would be a great game. I mean, I would love to see the Ravens and the Lions in the Super Bowl. That'd be a great game to watch in Vegas. And I'm wholeheartedly rooting for the Lions. I do hope they do it.
The only team stopping them is the Niners, who are about to play in their third straight NFC Championship game and fourth in 5 years. So basically, them and the Chiefs have just dominated the league in the last couple of years. But Kyle Shanahan's team has only won one of those games 4 years ago at home to Green Bay. That was also the last championship game in San Francisco. The other times they've gone on the road to play those games. Probably second best of the Chiefs, you could probably say, in that 5 year period. They've been there, year in, year out. They had one off year, but they rebuilt. They got Trey Lance and they had the third overall pick because but like they're not going to have a pick in the top three for a while. I don't think. But they're about the next year. But they're yet to get that ring, and that is. It's felt like it's only a matter of time. This may be their greatest opportunity to get that because the 7.5 point favourites in a home NFC Championship game. As you mentioned, they have a running back who's been nominated for MVP. They have one of the best receiver duos in the league, potentially the best tight end in the league in George Kittle. Trent Williams, probably the best left tackle in the league, and you've got more players on offense. And they have a great defense too, with about 6 great defensive line options. And they have Nick Bosa as well. A trio of linebackers that are some of the best in their at the position as well. And a great secondary that includes one of the best corners in the league, Charvarius Ward. For the Niners, this feels like now or never, doesn't it? Because they've just not got there. They've been there so many times before, and they've just not been able to get it done. It feels like this is the team to do it, doesn't it?
It does. But like you said, we've been saying this for some years now. I remember the game against Jimmy Garoppolo. I think it was against the Kansas City Chiefs where he threw a pick. Where it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't his fault per se. If I remember the play, I think the receiver kind of messed up. I forget who it was. Might have been Jennings. I'm not too sure. But you name all those people, all those star players on the 49ers, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of firepower there. But then I flip it to the Lions and think they've got one of the most underrated O-lines in the game. And then behind them is one of the best tandems in the game in Montgomery and Jimmy Gibbs. Gibbs has been, I love the way they've slowly progressed Gibbs. And Dan Campbell was right with what he said. Be patient. We're not going to fire him out the gun yet. We got to work him to full speed. And you can see, he is a difference maker. He commands attention. Then you've got the hammer and nail in the sense of Montgomery. Then you've got some underrated guys in the wide receiver room for the Lions, like Reynolds as well, who's obviously another great receiver, Khalif Raymond, who's a speedster. So I think this is where you'll see big guys like Jameson Williams have big games. Again, they've gone under the radar a little bit because they've had their injury and they've had their absence. But you want to show up in games like this where I guess teams aren't specifically scheming for you, where that the Lions are obviously going to be scheming for the number one guys. But I think the Lions they've got enough to get it done for sure. And I like everything that they've done up to this point. It's going to be a great game for sure. It's going to be a great game.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it right at the start there. I think quarterback has been the problem, you could say, for the Niners. As you mentioned, Jimmy, he missed throws in the Super Bowl. When they did get there, it prompted them to draft Trey Lance, and obviously that didn't work. But Brock Purdy rose like a phoenix after Lance and Jimmy's season-ending injuries last year, and he took a starting opportunity as a Mr. Irrelevant, and he ran with it, reaching back-to-back NFC title games. He'll be hoping to have a much better time of it this time than he did last year, because obviously last year he went down with the elbow injury right at the start, and it sort of derailed the game, and the Eagles won and got to the Super Bowl. And he's responded this year with a top season. He too has been nominated for MVP like Christian McCaffrey. It's just whether he is the guy to get him over this hurdle and maybe win the Super Bowl. That's just the only question, because he's looked great this year, much better than he did last year. I thought that this year he's been really, really good at moments, but last week concerned me. A lot of factors went against the team last week. He didn't add much though. He didn't elevate the team, and that's why they struggled last week. Other than one throw to George Kittle, the rest of the game wasn't wasn't that impressive for me. So it's just whether Purdy is the guy, because if Purdy can turn up in this game, the Niners win this game. I think that's the. But if they struggle, then it allows the Lions to come back in, doesn't it?
I mean, I think this is where people have the conversation about Brock Purdy, because what is his X factor? I mean, Jared Goff might not necessarily have an X factor, but he's experienced. He's been to a Super Bowl before. He's been here before. He's done that. He didn't win it, but he's been there. Brock Purdy doesn't necessarily have the X factor that Lamar Jackson has, that Patrick Mahomes has. We know that. We've seen it. And this is, I suppose, why people call him a game manager. Call him what you want. He's the one in the NFC Championship game and nobody else, right? But that's what it might come down to. It might come down to, what can you offer as a quarterback outside of throwing the ball, getting out of the pocket, and making your reads? What else can you put the team on your back if need be? Because injuries happen. Christian McCaffrey might go out injured. Debo might not even play. Then what are you going to do? Because that's two huge offensive weapons that you don't have. You might not have, and then how do you compete in this game? So it's going to be a case of, if he does well, the narrative will go, okay, he can do it. And if he doesn't, the media will have a field day and they'll talk all day long about Brock Purdy's not the guy and all this kind of trash, because that's what they do. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see just how he can elevate the team, because we know what his weapons are capable of, but how can he elevate this team in the situations where he may be under pressure? So it will be good to find out.
Absolutely. And again, as mentioned last week, that throw to Kittle just moved to his right and then dropped it right in front of him for the touchdown. That was really, really nice. But the rest of the game, he wasn't great. He missed a couple of throws. He struggled with the rain as well. Like, as the rain came down, he was basically taking a glove on and off. Just not really getting the grip of the football right. And Green Bay kept throwing pressure at him. And he was just missing throw after throw. After that, he had 18 pressures and just completed 7 passes in those 18 pressures. So a lot of incompletions there, which for him as well, he's normally quite an accurate passer. And but if you can disrupt his rhythm like the Packers did, then you can certainly get to him. And against this Detroit defensive line, that worries me because the Lions had 15 pressures last week against Baker Mayfield. They got to him 4 times for sacks, and they forced him to throw 2 interceptions. Detroit are also one of the best teams against the run too. So if they can stop the run and stopping the run and stopping Christian McCaffrey is 2 different things.
It's so easy.
It's very, very difficult to stop Christian McCaffrey, isn't it?
But Aiden Hutchinson's obviously one of the star guys on that side of the field, and you'd hope that he shows up, whether it be pressure sacks or hurrying the QB, just anything to try and throw the game plan out the window. And he's someone that the 49ers offensive line will obviously be planning for. But yeah, man, it's a great matchup. It's a great matchup. 2 great games, and we'll soon find out who's going to be in the big game, man. Big game in Vegas.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm kind of tempted to pick the Lions. I don't know. It's weird because as you mentioned, Debo potentially being out is an interesting thing to note. He was limited in practice yesterday with a shoulder injury, and if he's limited, the likelihood is he probably is going to play. Because if you're limited on a Thursday, it means you're probably going to be a full participant on a Friday, and then you're probably going to play. That's the way it normally goes. Some guys don't even practice and they'll end up playing. So the fact he's practicing is good. But with a banged up Debo and Detroit being good against the run as well, if I'm them, I'm probably fancying my chances. So
you've got to. I think you've got to.
Absolutely.
And I think Debo will play regardless, but it's whether he can stay in the whole game and not take too many shots. You don't want to have to play hurt, but it's an NFC Championship game, so he'll give it his all. Whether he can stay healthy is another discussion. But they've got a shot, of course. Any given Sunday, they've definitely got a shot. Whether they can pull it off is a different story. But I'm still backing them regardless.
Yeah, we were having this conversation last week, and I was saying, if you get to the Final 4, you can win a Super Bowl because
can happen.
Exactly, or you can just get to the Super Bowl. There's only one more win that you could do, and that's the thing. I think I'm going to go for the Lions. I actually if I was betting, I absolutely love this spread. I'd definitely be betting under 7.5 points. I think that's a really, really, really good bet compared to Ravens Chiefs. The Ravens favored by only 3.5, so that's quite a big difference there. So the Niners are favored by over a touchdown in this game, and I just don't see that being the case.
No, I don't.
I'll go with that. I think I just tended to go for the Lions. I just got a feeling, and I feel like the way they've won, they've convinced me the last 2 weeks. The Niners haven't exactly convinced me, so yeah, it'd be a close game. But yeah, give me the Lions to win this one, and yeah, we both of our picks are exactly the same. Ravens Lions Super Bowl, which is if you were to pick the winner of that game in Vegas, who would you pick?
Oh, Ravens. I mean, again, I love it for the Lions, but if they do win against the 49ers, I think it stops at the Super Bowl. I do not see the Ravens losing to the Lions. Again, anything can happen. I mean, the Bills already got to 4 Super Bowls back to back and lost all 4 of them. So, yeah, I think it'll be if the Ravens and Lions make it to the Super Bowl, the Ravens, that would be, they came to London. I actually got to meet and interview Lamar Jackson and Harbour as well, so it'd be really cool for him to go all the way and win it.
Yeah, absolutely, and either way, whichever matchup it is, we're gonna get a cool storyline, because if it's Chiefs Lions, well, that's the same matchup from week 1 where the Lions beat the Chiefs and started this whole Chiefs thing. If it's Niners Ravens, and obviously that's a Super Bowl rematch from 2012 when it was the Harbaugh Bowl. So either way, you're gonna get some really cool. Some really cool game, and if it's Chiefs Niners, then it's going to be a rematch of the 2020 Super Bowl. So either way, you've got it's going to be one amazing Super Bowl, and I bet you're well happy you're going to be there as a
man. So for me, it's like regardless who gets there. I mean, again, I want the Ravens Lions, but regardless, it'll be good to just be in and around it all. I can't wait. Really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast, George. We'll have you on in future for sure. And hope you have a good time in Vegas.
It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me on. Always welcome. I'd love to do this again. Maybe we'll catch up in the off season after what might be another crazy off season of moves. Well, who knows? We'll have to see.
It always is. I've been Sam Moores. This has been the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, and I will see you when we know the Super Bowl teams. I'll see you Monday.